Neste punkt på agendaen printeren. Printeren altså ganske kostbar når vi hele tiden må bytte blekk. Kopimaskinen begynner å slite fordi noen har satt seg på den.
FINN.no.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this first of a series of 3 tech lunches here from Finn. The topic for the series is our cloud migration, how we migrated to the Google Cloud in one night. This first lunch is about the leadership perspective. The next one will be about planning and preparing, and the last one will be a technical view of the actual night of migration. But today we're talking about the leadership perspective, and with me I have Morten.
Hi, I'm Morten. Manager, Director for Infrastructure at FINN.
Yeah, and Bente.
Yes, and my name is Bente Ulvestad. I'm a manager of the platform department in FINN Technology.
Okay, let's get started. So, how did we manage to migrate to the cloud in a single night? And we say single night, but of course there was a lot of preparatory work going in here, so we'll talk a bit about that. And first of all, we were faced with some very big decisions in Finn. We're one of the most popular websites in Norway, lots of traffic, lots of machines running this. So we were faced with some big decisions, and Morten is going to talk a bit about why and how we made those decisions.
Yeah, so basically at FINN, we are really good at building these abstraction layers. So developers at FINN, they do not have to deal with lots of stuff. They can focus on coding. But I think when you build abstractions layers on top of something, that something could become a problem after a while. So at FINN, when I started 3-4 years ago, I realized that all that good work actually balanced on top of something that wasn't mature enough anymore. So we had to make a decision. Either we could continue as before and hope that this would hold, or we could try to do something with the infrastructure. So yeah, this is the story about how we ended up actually doing that. So when you evaluate a cloud provider or somewhere to move all your infrastructure, in our case, we have had basically the same infrastructure or infrastructure provider or the data center for all of the company's life. You need to focus on something. So we decided to focus on technology. FINN is a technology company, and we wanted to have a great technology partner. So we had to figure out what is the most important for us. So we decided that Kubernetes, the quality of the managed Kubernetes service, was the top one. And we also wanted a company with a good tech roadmap and a company that was considering and thinking and taking responsibility for the environmental footprint of their kind of business or operations. So we had an evaluation. So we evaluated 4 different cloud providers. We had meetings, we had presentations and all of that. And at the end, we ended up evaluating 2 of them thoroughly by actually installing parts of our stack and figure out how to debug and actually live in that environment, which gave us really good feedback on how this would work if we move there. Yeah, I think the next one. So there's a lot of pros and cons, but for FINN, it was basically the best technology alignment with our operations that actually mattered the most. And we also had to investigate the concerns around the rest of Schibsted. Would we actually break anyone else's kind of agenda too much, or could we do what was best for Finn? The reason is that for Finn, it's most important that we maintain speed. So we need to make sure that we can continue to have efficient developers while also kind of try to be compliant with the rest of the company. So we ended up challenging that policy a bit with the rest of the mother company, but we tried to do it, and I think maybe we succeeded doing that in a politically okay way for the rest of Schibsted and the other companies in it. Changing infrastructure partner is something that you do maybe, I don't know, every 10th year or something. So it's important to do that process really, really well when you consider doing it or approach the way to do it. So we decided to go to the cloud, but the important thing is that you can make such a decision, but you don't necessarily have the manpower to do it. So what we ended up doing was to decide to free up capacity internally. So we stopped basically a focus on renewing the old data center in every way. So there was no investments in anything anymore. We stopped actually maintaining lots of the servers and the routines that we had in the data center to get capacity on basically investing in the new roadmap that we had decided to do. This is something you basically can do for a year or something, and then the impact of neglect of service and maintenance will hit you really hard. So as you will see later, we used 2 years on this travel since we actually made the decision to go to the cloud, and that made an impact on our strategies later on.
So Morten talked a bit about this, the fact that we were breaking new ground for Schibsted. AWS was the default public cloud provider in Schibsted, and most companies did. Some companies were using other clouds for stuff, but this was the main provider. And we need to anchor this decision to move to Google Cloud on every level of the organization. So all through the management teams up to the management team in Schibsted, and even in some parts the board of Schibsted. We had to anchor this. But I think one of the most important things we said is, well, we need to lower the risk for Finn. Finn is an important company in the Schibsted portfolio. We need to lower the risk of this operation. We have to have the best provider that gives us the best speed. And we also land on introducing the polycloud strategy, saying we'll use the best provider for the best services, no matter what services it is, no matter what provider it is. So we decided very early on that, no matter if we're going with AWS or GCP, we'll still leave our machine learning stuff in GCP, which was already there. Our data warehouse is running on Redshift in AWS, and it still is, even though we moved to Google Cloud Provider, because it's, it answers our needs the best. So we said we'll pick the best provider and use the best offers from the best providers. And then we focused on 2 alternatives for all the management teams, saying either we take Finn to Google Cloud Provider or we have to take it to AWS. We had to go for a public cloud. That was the only solution that supported the way we want to move Finn in the future. And we focused on the most important features of the alternative that we wanted to GCP. It was the best strategic fit. They have the superior Kubernetes capabilities. It was a company that thinks alike the way we are, and Morten talked about it, the focus on technology. And what was also very important, it was the least risk. We had, moved all in on Kubernetes and containerization for a number of years. So having the best provider with this took the risk down on the actual migration. And it also turns out it was the cheapest, not by much, but it was, even when we included the discounts that Schibsted already had on AWS, Google was still a valuable or a reasonable offer. So we went all the way and got this support from the very top of the company saying, okay, you take this decision. It is the right decision for Finn and Schibsted, and we all stand behind you, which was very important for stuff that had to happen over the next year or so. So the decision was made just before Christmas a year ago, saying, okay, we'll go for Google. We signed the contract. Now we can actually really start moving on this. But this was done a lot in management teams. Now we really need to onboard the rest of the organization on this change. And Martin will talk a bit about how we used planning and what kind of approach we did to get the rest of the organization on board.
Yeah, so we made a plan very early on saying that, well, we were going to have a graceful migration to the cloud where nobody was actually going to be impacted much. The infrastructure department were going to make this beautiful hybrid cloud kind of platform that would tie together the old data center and the public cloud in a seamless way. Well, that was fun for a while, and you will hear more about that in the technical part of this, but it was kind of too good to be true. So we had to drop it, basically. It was really hard discussions. People were kind of frustrated because we had invested a lot in making this work. And if it had worked, it would be really great. But it was a good plan. We had to throw it away. So the thing is, when you run a big product like this, you need to re-evaluate your plan all the time. So that is something we did at least every quarter, or for my part, all the time. We redid the thinking about the approach. Was the approach the right one? Was it the right approach at the time we were in? Was it the right approach based on what we had just learned, or what kind of things impacted us at the moment? So I also said very early on, I think that's important, that after a year, if we get delayed more than a year, we had to reevaluate the whole thing, kind of the whole thinking behind going to cloud. So we actually did that. We have a presentation on it if somebody is interested, I guess. And we decided we could continue to go to the cloud. The public cloud was probably still the best for us, but we needed to do it differently. Otherwise, we would not succeed. And all of these things that we have postponed of maintenance would come and probably bite us really hard and be a risk, at least a highly increased risk for the business. Yep. Okay. So what do we do to track this thing? So in Finn, we always track things. If we want to achieve anything, we set some kind of a way to measure it. So basically what we did was early on set a target on number of applications transferred or migrated to cloud, because we thought that was going to be a sensible performance index. Well, we had to change the whole planning, so that it actually became a really bad index, because it went kind of from 0 to 800 or so in a day, or at least a week or something. So, but luckily we had other performance indexes also, like the number of applications that passed the cloud acceptance criteria. So basically we stuck with all the indexes that we had created, which was basically 5, but they proved to have completely different significance than we originally thought. It was still valid though, so they tracked the progress that we had. We also, the last one here, they also tracked or the basic one for migrating to the cloud is basically shutting down the old data center, which is the last one that you see in the picture here. I think we'll move on. So quickly in a project like this, we ended up having too many things, too many files, too many documents, too many spreadsheets. It was a challenge to keep everything updated. So we created this Google Sites, simple web portal to gather links of information to everything, and making it both a little bit easier to write status reports every month, and also easier to find and to actually comprehend what was going on. So let's see. And a really important part, I think, maybe the thing outside of the infrastructure department that has taken most resources out of the whole project, was to assure that the applications that had run nicely for I don't know, between 5 and 20 years in the old data center would actually run nicely when we migrated. So we basically ended up having to migrate everything in one go. And that is one challenge. The other challenge is to have some kind of quality assurance that everything will actually work after such a transition, a cutover. So every team in FINN had to evaluate their applications on a number of parameters, and we collected these parameters and a number of others every day, basically, to track progress. It was a huge, what we call in Norwegian, dugnad, but I think it proved very well. It also, I think, improved the quality of services in FINN in general. Yeah, a bit about economy. So it would have been hard, it proved hard to convince anyone in management in FINN and Schibsted also, I guess, to accept this project without some kind of guarantee of the cost. So we basically had to come up with an assumption of the cost picture. So that's what you see here in brown is the estimated cost picture of the whole transition. We got delayed for a number of reasons and for a number of times. But since the last time we presented the cost breakdown, we were delayed one time. As you see here, it's I don't know, 4 or 5 months compared to what we estimated. So it doesn't follow. So the estimate doesn't follow. It's sharper. The increase is sharper. The down the decrease in cost is also sharper than we expected. This is basically a good thing. So we have managed to keep the amount of time where we pay double for the old data center and the new one. For fewer amounts of months than we actually planned for.
Thanks, Morten. So we had good plans that we changed when we needed them. We had great KPIs that tracked our progress and showed us, where we were according to the picture. And then everything changed. The coronavirus came, there was a lockdown, and they had some expected and unexpected corona effects. The fact that this company had to shift focus was natural. There was less focus on the long-term pictures, and a lot more focus on the short-term, keeping a well-functioning marketplace, execute on things that could have a major impact on society, like the free job listings or corona help features on FINN, and not least ensure that the FINN as a company has a sound economy. But what we hadn't expected was that we quickly saw record numbers of traffic. So in week 12, if you look at the dark gray graph on the right-hand side, 2020 is the darkest line. So in week 12, it was lower, or it took a dip almost to last year's level. But from then, we have had really amazing traffic amounts on Finn. And then just the Easter effect is showing something else, but usually really good growth, which was sort of had a double effect, especially for our infrastructure department. You know, they had to divert focus from the cloud migration to just deal with the current situation, the new traffic records, fixing what we had. And the whole priority of the cloud migration was less for the company as well. So that was one of the effects that was a challenge. Also, something that we had known for a long time, that some parts of our production systems would have a hard end of life at the end of the year. We had known that since the start, but in the beginning, that was 2 years in the future. So it was less important. But now that we could watch our KPIs, we saw that progress was slower than we had anticipated, especially after the virus came. We realized that we were starting to struggle to meet the deadlines. So we knew we had to fix it by the end of the year. This complex strategy of being able for all teams to just move what they wanted when they wanted was too complex, and we didn't have enough time. So we had to figure out some other way of fixing it. So we changed it. Morten and I and the management team in Finn talked about this before the summer a lot, saying, okay, how can we do this? Is there a way of doing it? And we figured out, okay, if we can accept two things, I guess. Actual downtime on Finn, which is something we do very rarely, planning downtime. But this time we said we need some hours with actual being completely down. And we need to increase the risk a bit. If we can do that, we'll make it before the end of the year. And to really get focused on this, we'll say, well, we'll do it on the 15th of September. Then we have some leeway if we fail. And this will really give a great focus on the organization. So just before the summer, we decided this. I sent out an email to the whole organization saying we will do this, but please relax, take a good summer break. And then once we get back, we'll really work hard to get there. So putting that date there, being that specific, gave us some very good advantages. We had to explain this to the whole company. So in Finn, we set these management priorities 2 times a year. And we said, well, that's nice, but now we have to change them. We have to put the cloud migration as number 1. The rest of the company accepted it and backed us completely, saying, yes, we understand why this is important. And it's great that you can keep it in a short and intense period. So we'll put it as the number 1 priority for everyone. So the whole organization had buy-in. Everyone felt the common sense of urgency, and it gave us a great gathering goal as well in a situation where everybody was sitting at home and wondering what's going on. So we had a lot of energy and a common goal, a common sense of urgency around this, which was really great. But it gave us a very short time to get ready. We've been working on this for, the whole planning, thinking about this for a year and a half, actual work since January. So in June, we realized we were running out of time. July, we said we'll shift to a cutover strategy. We took a well-deserved summer break. The spring had been intense for a lot of teams in Finn with Corona. And then after the summer, I got together with my management team and said, okay, how can we manage this project? It's a really short time. We have to make sure that everything happens and all the bits are connected. So on the 17th of August, less than 1 month before the move, we set down this core group, which Bente will talk more about.
Yes, so I think this was one of the clever things that we did. We started talking that we need a project manager, and then we realized it's a lot of work and a very little time. And to be able to do that, we can't do it traditional projects. But what we do in Finn, and we've done several times before, is that we have core project teams taking care of big bets. And so we did this as well in this situation, and we had these 5 people, me included, and of course Morten, who had been in the project for a very long time, came in to have various roles. We also brought in Rodolfo, which was responsible for tech coordination. He's one of our enterprise architects, and he knows all the teams and can do that communication in between. Also, Halvor has long experience in managing risks, so he took that role. And we have Vega, who is really happy to talk to people, so he got the information and communication part. And me was given the task of getting the big picture and overall coordination, which I thought, okay, so what does this actually mean? Well, it means that management needs to know that we're on track. I had no intention of getting a complete overview of everything because that would just take at least the time we had available to get there. So what we did next was to use the organization to do what they know best. So to trust the teams to do their part was essential to gather in time. So what we did, we created this weekly status report that we sent out to all our managers. We gave them a weekly focus area. So for each week, we'd tell them this week, it's really important that your team focus on for instance, getting your applications ready, cloud native, that you update this sheet here to know, let everyone know you're finished. And also give us a kind of assessment. So you can see on the top left corner here is the self-assessment sheet. And it gave us a quick overview how ready are the different teams. We also gave them this traffic light and told them, and I think this was probably the most important question, are you on track or not? Will you make the 15th? And in the beginning, we had a lot of yellow lights and some red lights even. And we follow that up with these 3 columns on the bottom, which is the program. So what have you done the last week? What are your plans for the next week? And what are the problems? And especially if you have a yellow or red light, list your problems so that we can help you sort them out. Next. So we did this every week. And I think in the first status report, a lot of people was asking, can we really, really make this? But after a while, the traffic lights became more and more green. And we had set this date of the 7th of September about whether we go for the 15th or not. That was our final go, no-go date. And actually, at that time, we were all green. And we we felt that this was kind of amazing given the start, but we said that we're ready to go. Next.
Yeah, and then we're going to talk about the night of the migration. There's a separate lunch on this a bit later, but now we'll talk about the management perspective, the leadership. How did all the parts come together, Bente?
Yes. So I think going up to the migration night, like I said, we put a lot of trust in our team. So it was mostly self-reporting, making sure everyone was on track. Still, we also needed everything to come together on the final night. How do we make sure that sort of 20 to 30 teams are ready and can follow the status and do their testing during the night, and that we remember everything and don't forget vital steps in this process? We only had one test run, and that's when you see in the middle here. We before the test run, what IO department or Morten's department did was to write a run book, a detailed step-numbered run book for everything they needed to do during the test migration. And we also told all the teams that we're doing this test migration on this date, please follow up and see if things go well or not. And we did this with the run book, and I kindly asked one of Morten's tech leads to time each step. Can you just clock in whenever everything has happened so that you have an approximation of how long each step will take? And of course, we had to do some adjustments to the run book as well. We forgot some steps, and we needed to add some of the steps for the teams. But we got this together. So quite a long, detailed run book with links to monitoring systems and other resources that we needed on the way. And then we did that. We took all the headlines of the different chapters of the run book, and we did a high-level run book for management and we added the time frames from the test run, and with some leeway and best case, worst case scenarios. I'll show you that a little bit later. Another thing we decided is that we in Finn and Schibsted has a very good system for incident management. And even though this is a planned event and not an incident per se, we figured out that the roles and responsibilities and the way we run incidents fits very well with running this migration night. So we set up a system with very clear roles of who is the incident manager, who's in charge of contacting people if we need it. And so everyone knew who to go to for different issues if they arose. So in case it became an incident, we were already rigged to handle an incident. But it also helped us with the migration. Next. So just to show you a little bit what it looked like, this is the management runbook, where you see all the different steps of switching the traffic from our old data center to GCP, how we disable our deployment, updating the list of other FIAS apps, etc. So there's all these steps, and we did a timeline estimate for the best case and the worst case. So we go all these intervals and then we also clocked it on and figured out, so will we be finished in time? Because that was during the test run. It was really important to know, is it actually doable in a night? And we figured we'll probably finish somewhere between 3 hours, 10 minutes to be exact, and hopefully 7 hours, 45 if things go wrong. Of course, it could take longer if everything goes wrong, but given some trial and errors, we still believe we can make it within 8 hours. Also, we set up some synchronization points. Those are the bold ones, where we'd do some extra testing. Next. Where we had these different sheets. So what we did, we actually split it in 2 parts. We had some vital services that we figured needs to be in place before everything else is moved, which is the core of the infrastructure as a service, and how you deploy and some really important services that we figured. So for instance, the user, if that doesn't work, a lot of other services will struggle because they depend on the user. So we had done a work of recognizing these services, and then we had people dedicated to testing and making sure they were working before we rolled on to the next one. So that was the first gateway. Next. The second big gateway was to test everything. So we set away some time, like an hour or so, to test all the apps. And we made this other sheet where everyone would just call back and say that we are okay to proceed. And also there you can see we found one problem during the night. That was a code change that caused some minor issues for us, but it seemed to work out. So we were able to fix that within an hour. So, and we rolled forward instead of rolling back. Okay, next. Also, I think 2 things that is nice to know is that when discussing should we actually have a team in place in Grensen, where our offices are, to work like a task force, and we decided no. Actually, we've been working remote for so long, and people have all the setups at the office, that we felt it was less risky to move people just for this night, just let them work in their known environments. They are trained to do this by now. So everything was done remote. No one was in the office, at least not from the core team, maybe one, but that was due to bad conditions in his apartment. So everyone was working remote. Another thing was that we had no hard code freeze. So even the last day before this, we had people checking in changes into production. We encouraged a code slush that said that if it's not really important, please wait until after. But still, some important stuff were still shipped all the way up to almost the code or the turn down of the system. Next.
So that was the climax after a year and a half of planning. Lots of changes of plans, and we said, okay, we'll go for 15th of September, and we can do it in one night. We proved that we could do it in one night, and there was lots of celebrations once we started up the system on the morning of the 15th of September. But that's a couple of months ago. So what has happened since then, Morten?
Yeah, so basically we have gotten the kind of the result of October, It's ended with 99.98% uptime for the FINN services as we measured them. And most of the systems are more stable than ever, actually, but there are some challenges. So I think there has been a steady stream of challenges since we turned the traffic over. But it seems to tickle in a kind of acceptable amount at the time. And truth to be told, we also have some really, really good people to handle these things. And we do have a good collaboration with DCP people when we need that. But mostly it's our applications, or it still has been the transit link between the old and the new data center causing problems because the environment is different. The design under our applications is different. Next. Yeah, so the shutdown of the data center. So there's no point going to the cloud if you can't also shut down the old data center. It has taken us 1.5 months. So we basically ordered the shutdown of the data center yesterday, Monday actually. And that means we have forklifted the rest of the, 100 and something VMs that we have to GCP. Those services are not made basically to run in GCP, but there is this big goal to actually get everything over and being able to shut it down. So we will have work to do in 2021, but it feels really good to have everything over and that we can shut the old down and move on to the next chapter. So we have a really great platform now in GCP and wants to look forward.
So that was the story from a management perspective. And, as a good manager, you should always look back and see what have we learned. And there are some key lessons here. Having a tight core team combined with an organization that steps up and take responsibility is a major strength for FINN. You can trust teams to do things, to set the goals. And when you have a small team of experts that can handle it, it's great. Our strong KPI focus that we have in FINN has helped us even controlling this. We saw that we were lagging behind and we couldn't meet our deadlines. We realized we had to shift the approach and the goals and the ways. We got crystal clear prioritization from the whole company. It was clear that the cloud migration needed to move on. That didn't mean that everyone in FINN Technology was only working on this for 3 months or even 1 month. It meant that some people worked a lot on this. Some people didn't work on it at all. Most people did some of it. But whenever you did something and you had to make a choice, should I support the cloud migration or should I do something else? If you could support the cloud migration, that's what you do. So it always moved forward. We have a bird-class infrastructure team. If we hadn't had this team in-house, we wouldn't have been able to pull this off. Great people with great expertise and a can-do attitude. So that was very important. And last but not least, the ability to change plans that Morten talked about, that we used on all levels of the organization. Good plans are great, but you have to be able to change them when the world changes around you. So this is just a snapshot of the 4 or 5 different plans we had during the way. So thank you for listening, and now we'll go and answer some questions if there are any questions. Frida.
Dette blir Pinda og Pintores aller første jul.
Han får julegave av hånda på lik linje som ungene.
For de får jo gaver, de får lov til å pakke opp. Det blir opp til et par tusen kroner også, for å si det sånn.
Skal vi pakke opp en gave? Se den store gaven her da. Ja, må du se her.
Skal dere få julegave? Hva det for noe? Oi!
Amandus, kom her.
Ble jeg rokke, ja?
Perurus?
Så det rekost, Amandus?
Perurus, Anna?
Nei, det vet jeg ikke.
Oi! Det en varmelampe. Er du glad?
Her kommer julegaven.
Wow! Nå tror jeg pinnedyrene blir glade.
Anton, se! Kunne du bære varene dine selv, Anton?
Se på den, da. Den er mye finere. Nei.
Jo, på største her. Vi prøver her igjen. Kom da.
Da har den maten. Kom.
Synes du han ser fornøyd ut, da?
Ja, kjempefornøyd. Helt den får seg en skinke til.
FINN.no.
Kom an, skal du få rekeost?
So I guess I should have said over to commercial, but I forgot. So now we'll answer the questions. And we'll start at the top. There aren't too many questions, so if anyone else has, please post them. How did you manage to trust your teams and to be sure that they deliver? But you can get this, but I'll just say first that trust and talk, Heidi, is one of the most important values in Finn. So we have an organization with high trust and high confidence. But Bente, you had to trust them a lot on this reporting. So what do you say?
Yes, but I think you're right, Nikolai. It's been part of Finn culture for so long that it wasn't really that hard to trust people. I know they've stopped up before. I know they are excellent engineers and they really know what they're doing. So it was more a matter of getting the priorities, so everyone knew that this is okay to spend as much time as needed to get this done. That was really important. Another thing was to have these systems of reporting that, yes, we're done. And we tried to gamify it a little bit so that it was visible and you got a green status if you were done and it was more red if you wasn't. So people really chased those to get those into the green part of the playing field. And also I think people really want to help if they can. This is a can-do spirit that you talked about in the I organization. It's definitely part of the Finn culture as well. But I think it helped that we were very clear on the weekly status. We kind of cut it down and said, so there's a lot of things that needs to be done in 6 weeks, or 4 weeks, whatever. This week, we would like you to at least focus on this part because this is really important to get in place to move on to the next part. So we had this sense of a sequencing of what was important to do when. Also, I think the traffic lights and the 3 columns on the status report was called, we had progress, plans, and problems was really important because especially problems usually has to do with dependencies. Things are stuck because we're waiting for something. To get those up and be able to help them solve these kind of dependencies was a really important part of the job, especially I think for Rodolfo, who was a chief enterprise architect. He did a lot of talking with people to get to understand why things were difficult. And we were able to solve them fairly quickly whenever we found them. But yeah, so we have great people. It's easy to trust them, and as long as they know what's important and what the priorities are, they will raise to the occasion, I think.
Next question. In retrospect, what would you change in the migration process? Each of us can answer, but I know what I would have changed. I would have put together the core team earlier, probably in the middle of spring or even at the beginning of the year. Having this core team that only focused on this gave me a much better perspective of how things were doing, and that should have been set up earlier. So that's one thing I would have changed. Morten?
I guess we could have decided to do a disruptive cloud migration earlier. Would probably have given the most impact, but not as much learning.
Bente?
Yeah, I think I agree with the core team. It was, I think, one of the pain points for Morten and his department was how do we engage the rest of the organization? So everyone knew this was going on and that we were going to move sometimes, especially before we did the 15th of September date. People were kind of waiting a little bit. What's going on? We're not quite sure. So we struggled a little bit with getting the communication across the entire organization. I think Morten's people knew a lot about what's going on, and then the further away you got, it was more difficult. So I think when we got the core team in place, it was easier because then we were more people in different parts of the organization who could take the message from Morten and kind of get things going a bit easier.
Next question is interesting. If you had to estimate, what was the total cost, time, resources you had to spend to achieve this? That's a question that's very hard to answer, and especially the way we're working in Finn. I would say it's pretty agile. We set goals, we move things, we have teams that contribute, we trust people to do the right things when we set the right goals. So the most concrete thing is that's, we said we'll run with double cost for a few months. I think the budget set aside for that was 6 million Norwegian kroners. So that's the most concrete number, but that's just, paying a bill, so that's easy. But all the time spent, all the resources, a lot of that time has been spent on improving Finn in general. Morten talked about this, getting applications to be cloud ready, made them better applications in general, even if they'd stayed on premise. So I haven't done that exercise yet, which might come as a surprise to some people. But in Finn, we set the goals and move to achieve them. So it will be interesting, but I have I'm not able to answer that now. Anyone else?
I think it's impossible to estimate in kroner and øre, but I think is a good thing in this is that we were actually able to maintain development also in this most critical 4 to 6 weeks in the very end. Up to then, I think a lot of teams have not been hit very hard. They have, of course, had to improve their apps, but it's not like they had to set aside a lot of resources to do this. We were running a business all through this, and also in the last 4 to 6 weeks, we were able to run Finn as a business and provide new features and new things for our users and customers all the way, which I think was the most important thing for us was keep impact low.
Yeah. And it was a major investment, but I think the alternatives is what you need to think about. The alternative was not to spend any money on this. The alternative would have been to make at least the same investment into all the infrastructure, existing solutions, things that wouldn't take us into the future. So the difference there might be the most interesting number.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Next, it's great to see Finn take the environmental impact into account when choosing a cloud provider. Do you do that with other decisions at Finn? Morten, I didn't really think of this. This, I think, came from the infrastructure team itself, saying that this is something we should take into account. I think it was a great idea once someone brought it up. And we have had some discussions about it. But if we take that, I'm not sure if it's something that we always think about. Morten?
No, so I think Finn is a huge part in this kind of circular economy and these things, which points us in a direction. We should care about the environment. So in this journey, we did that, and we also had talks with Schibsted and their kind of initiatives around this to get an anchor for this evaluation or this part of it. And I think they were very happy, and I think it's very in line with what we try to do. The point is, it's not as easy to identify which of the things we as a business do which have an environmental kind of impact or footprint. We are basically a bunch of developers or salespeople or product managers. And we sit in offices. So what impact on the environment do we have? So this is one of the ways that we can actually try to have an impact. We can select an offer or a provider that actually tries to only use green electricity, for instance, and some other things.
Next
question. I can just address it quickly as well. I think it's in our mission statement is to make it easier for people to take good decisions for themselves and society. So Finn has this in a mission that we would like people to be helpful when making good decisions for themselves and society. And I think this also goes into our culture. So when we make decisions, we will at least consider this. Maybe not systematically, but it's kind of part of our way of being to consider also impact on society, at least on major decision.
Apart from the obvious, what has been the most surprising outcome of moving to the cloud? I'm not sure if there has been that many surprises, I guess, but there are some things that we had expected, the ability to move even faster on some things. But Morten?
I guess for technology, at least in Finn, this has been a huge thing, because we all went into home office the 12th of March, and people got separated, physically at least, and in various ways. So having this common project that everybody had to kind of chip in more or less, and generating a lot of activity and collaboration across technology has been maybe the most surprising part, because that was never part of the plan. The plan was we were going to fix this under the feet of everything, and we want to migrate across to the cloud without anyone actually noticing. It became the opposite in every way. Everybody noticed, everybody had to take their part in this. We improved the quality of lots of our services, and I think we ended up in a quite different process than we ever planned.
Yeah, I guess the next question is related to that. From Mats, what type of indicators did you use to set the cloud acceptance criteria for an application across the teams, and how did teams verify them? Morten?
So basically, we ended up saying, well, we can't have an application in the cloud that will die. So we found the key parameters, kind of, is the application communicating with the other applications on the right channels, for instance. So in the old data center, everything was custom made. You could do whatever wrong, but if it still worked in the old data center, nobody had to care too much. When you move to the cloud, you basically will incur extra cost. You will affect the other services in unknown ways, because you don't know the environment particularly well. We didn't have any experience, actually. So we made sure that we had a list of parameters, kind of how much memory, those standard things, where do you route your traffic, how do you set your resource requirements, all of these things. We were worried that we would actually have too few resources. So to make sure that we would not in any way explode or die or have reduced performance when we enter the cloud, this was something we did. So we queried the Kubernetes cluster every day to get updated results on how each and every application was performing. And we also then had to go through a useful process of getting ownership for each application, for instance. This was something we didn't have.
So this is the actual sheet that we used for this, with all the applications downwards and all the different criteria that Morten talked about: requested CPU, max replicas, run as root, utilization, external requests. So lots and lots of stuff.
Yeah, so basically a lot of that spreadsheet was kind of red, or at least orange. And that changed during 2 or 3 months, I think, basically during the summer.
So next question is, this is interesting, especially these days. Which GCP regions are you using? How is that affecting storing personal data? You can talk about the regions, Morten, and I can say a bit about the storing.
Yeah. So we use the Hamila region in Finland, because that is the closest one. So it's the least latency that we could expect from any of the GCP regions. So that was especially important for us under the transition, because one of the huge worries that we had was that we would fail during the transition because of latency-related concerns between applications.
Yeah.
Also, I guess everything starts in Finland. I think it's great.
And the Hamna region is in Finland, and Finland is part of the EU, so the GDPR issues shouldn't have been a problem, or wasn't a problem when he started planning this. And then the Schrems 2 verdict in the EU courts came, and that changes things. But this is a question that every company who's in a cloud provider these days have to ask themselves. What does that mean? How can we deal with this? How can we be compliant given the new changes in regulations? But the original standpoint is that we are doing this inside of the European Union, so the GDPR regulations should be safe, everything should be safe, but then there is some legal development that we need to follow up on. Okay, I think this is for you, Morten. Change in competence, learning path for infrastructure teams. I guess it's the question of what does the infrastructure team has to, do you have to learn new things or not? Do you have the competence?
We all have to learn new things, even me. So the thing is, in Finn, we have used GCP and AWS for quite a long time. So at least for 3+ years already, we have had various stacks and services in GCP. So we had some experience at least from earlier, and we had an evaluation phase where we actually set up small environments where we learned. We got to have talks with, as the whole infrastructure team, with various cloud providers to get a solid idea about concepts and the kind of roadmaps that was out there, the thinking behind the services, all of these things. But to be frank, we do need to learn more. So we have completed the cloud migration. We have shut down the old data center kind of 2 days ago, December, and probably also the next year will be a time for sharing information, documenting what we have done, and basically making sure that this is something that sticks. This is not a project and then we have to run for the next thing. We will actually have a learning period on this.
So 2 minutes left and one question. That's perfect. Do you feel that your data and access protocols are as secure now as they were in the old data center setup? Morten, you start.
Yeah, basically, one of the reasons we went to the cloud, and one good argument for GCP is the security. So we have a far better security on kind of the hardware and interconnect layer than we had before. We have a lot of things for free, basically, compared to being in on-premise data center. We made sure under the transition itself that we had a full encryption of every network connection between the old data center and the new. And we make sure that we have kind of the best of the free security we can have and the best routines that we can manage to keep the applications that we run as secure as we can.
Yeah, and also moving to the cloud gives us access to new tools for different parts of the security layers and stack that we can easier access now than when we were on premise. So I think all in all, we're more secure now than we were in the old center.
Yeah. Of course, we will continue to focus on it because, as you said, new tooling and it actually makes it possible for us to have higher ambitions.
Okay, then it's noon. I would just want to thank everyone for watching. And if you didn't eat during this, have a great lunch. And there's 2 more lunches coming up on next week and the week after. And join that if you're interested in a more technical perspective on all this. Thank you.
Ja, da var det Hustad. Oi. Åh!
Ja, promp er jo helt naturlig.
Og noen er det jo litt lukt på, som jeg kanskje kjenner litt nett nå. Ja.
FINN.no